Cornel West, who joins us now. Dr. West, appreciate you being with us. It's good to see you.
It's always a blessing to see it, and I salute your two precious gifts from heaven.
Thank you.
Sebastian, Brother Wyatt. Yes, indeed.
They're doing well. Thank you. I want to ask you, Senator Manchin up in New Hampshire tonight, he seems to be testing the waters there. He says the parties are too far to the left and to the right. What do you think of his politics?
Well, you know, I just read the pamphlet Common Sense, and my God, they had the audacity to rename that after the great Thomas Paine's revolutionary pamphlet of January 10th, 1976, that was critical of all forms of hierarchy in the name of the dignity of those Sly Stone called everyday people. I don't think that the No Labels Party, with their hundreds of $1 million flowing already, are fundamentally focused on what I'm concerned about, which is the plight of poor and working people trying to come to terms with the cop cities. Why do the critiques of the cop cities trying to come to terms with striking?
Woo! Off to a good start, Gavin. I don't think it was a slow start. We're 60 seconds in, and this is music to my ears. Wow. And yeah, a good reminder also, a lot of people don't realize that the Thomas Paine pamphlet Common Sense, I know it's been commandeered and diluted and whatever. I actually went back and read it after Rage Against the Machine actually does a cover of this song Renegades, and then they like shout out Thomas Paine, and I was like, what? And then we're back. It's a based very, very anti monarchy little pamphlet, but also anti-power over others in general, as Cornel West laid out. But anyway, off to a bang up start, and also just contrast the way that he's able to communicate right now with the other fucking chief candidates, right? Joe Biden and Donald Trump, both about this. All of them are about the same age, I think. As each other, give or take 5 or 6 years, maybe a decade. I don't fucking know, but just light years ahead of them both in ability to communicate and convey emotion and empathy and all that jazz.
Yeah, it's so weird when it comes to speaking and communication. Some people really just have that ability. When they start talking, you start listening. And it's hard to pin down exactly where that quality comes from or how you obtain it. But Cornel West 100% has that quality. He could be saying basically anything and you're listening, right? You're fucking listening. It reminds me of a quote from The Beach Bum where Matthew McConaughey says to another character, he's like, it doesn't even matter what you say, it just sounds so fucking good the way you say it. And that almost kind of reminds me of Cornel West. Like, he could be saying anything, he could be reading the fucking phone book, and it would just, you would want to listen to it. And that's such an important quality to have when you're seeking public office.
Workers, be they in Hollywood, be they in Amazon, be they at UPS, coming to terms with the echo side, with the fossil fuel companies, steel, corporate greed running out of control. You know, we're at a moment now, my brother, where if we don't come to terms with this massive callousness and indifference to the plight of poor and working people, we're going to lose everything. Planet, democracy, qualitative relations with each other. That's how life and death like our situation is, my brother, very much so.
You know the concern, certainly. I mean, you've been asked this question a million times from a lot of Democrats and Republicans against Trump that a third-party candidate like yourself could siphon votes away from President Biden. David Axelrod recently tweeted saying in 2016, the Green Party played an outside role in the tipping the election to Donald Trump. Now with Cornel West as their likely nominee, they could easily do it again. Risky business. Now, I know you said you don't believe Jill Stein made that big a difference in the vote count in 2016. In Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, her votes did exceed Trump's margin over Clinton. So how do you answer that critique that you will be siphoning votes away and potentially leading to a Trump victory?
I would just like to point out that you have 1% is what you're bitching about. You're bitching about 0.8% of the vote. You're such a fucking loser. If you're bitching about 0.8% of the vote going to somebody else and you think you're so entitled to that vote, how about you should have done a better fucking job? How about you should have campaigned a little better, huh? How about you should have followed through with one of your 80 goddamn promises that you decided to fuck everybody over on? No, maybe then somebody wouldn't have had to run against you to actually like stand by their word, to actually give the people something who are out here fucking starving to death, fucking fumbling, fucking don't know what to do. Inflation keeps going up and up and up, and they're like, oh, actually inflation stopped going up. It's like, yeah, because everything is now way more fucking expensive. Okay, Joe Biden's doing nothing to combat that. He's not doing anything to raise the wages of working people. He's not doing anything to make sure that their rental costs don't go up, because forget fucking buying. They already fucked that up. They raised the interest rates in the mortgage. It's like, what's it, 7.5%, 8% for a regular fucking person nowadays. And that's if you can put 20% of your housing down, which you fucking can't, because now it's $500,000 to buy a house anywhere within 100 miles of a metropolitan area, which is the only place where you can get a job nowadays. Do you see how maybe if he hadn't fucked up so badly and the Obama administration hadn't fucked up so badly that people would have a little more trust in Democrats? And then, hey, maybe you wouldn't have to worry about 1% going to some other guy who pointed out all your goddamn flaws.
Well, part of it is that nearly 40% of our precious citizens every 2 and 4 years decide not to vote at all. And we know that the so-called spoilers, which is a category you can imagine I don't accept at all, over 2/3 of those who vote, it could be a Gary Johnson, a Sister Jill Stein, Brother Ralph Nader, whoever, people say they would never vote for the two parties. And I can understand those two parties become too corrupt. Their politicians are too conformist. Too many of the politicians themselves are just cowardly, will just say anything. What about truth? What about justice? Truth and justice is bigger than all of us, bigger than every party, every race, every person. If you're concerned about truth and justice, then you can't be cowardly, complacent, or conformist. And especially if you look at the world through the lens of those who are incarcerated, those who are in ghettos and hoods and barrios. Brother David Axelrod, he looks at the world through the lens of the establishment. Well, of course, from the lens of the establishment, he's concerned about reproducing the establishment. My God, my God. There's no doubt about that. In the 1850s, both parties supported slavery.
But I think he's probably
with
more
the Labor Party.
I think he seems more, though. I mean, you know, David Axelrod, he seems more interested in preventing former President Trump from getting reelected, more than, I'd say, recreating the establishment.
Yes. Well, no, I'm talking about the Democratic Party establishment, though, brother.
Oh, okay.
The Axelrod is, you see what I mean? You would agree with, he's very much part of the Democratic Party establishment.
Well, his interest. Anyway, I don't want to speak for him, but you criticize President.
Absolutely.
You criticized President Biden, saying recently that he contributed, in your words, I'm quoting, contributed to a crime against humanity when he became the architect of the mass incarceration regime in the 1990s. You're referring to the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act that then Senator Biden sponsored. You also said it's, quote, very clear that his cognitive powers are in decline. You have had a remarkable career. You've championed those whose voices have been silenced all your life. We've had you on the program a ton of times talking about that.
Okay, just to jump in one more time really quickly, guys, could you imagine Bernie Sanders clapping back like this to Anderson Cooper live on CNN? I mean, I'm just saying we never got anything close to that. Okay, this is 7 o'clock prime time, CNN live. People are paying attention. What is he talking about? He's talking about justice. He's talking about equality. He's talking about uplifting the middle class. He's saying, no, I oppose these things. The war on drugs, yes, I think that was a crime against humanity. Joe Biden still says he's proud of that. Joe Biden still is unwilling to free the nonviolent drug offenders that he put in jail, that he fearmongered about, that he ruined the lives of when they were children. No empathy for that. This is Cornel West doing an impeccable job of creating a moral contrast between himself and Joe Biden in a way that is undeniable to anybody who wants to be serious. And on top of that, he just very casually called Anderson Cooper a Democratic establishment to his face live on air. When did we ever get that from Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, fantastic stuff from Dr. West. And, you know, although Anderson Cooper hits him right off the bat with such a hack question, you know, imagine having Dr. fucking Cornel West on your show, and the first question you ask him is, well, don't you think you're going to spoil the election for Joe Biden? You know, it's such a fucking hack, obvious question to ask Cornel West, but I'm actually kind of glad that he asked it. I think he actually did a little bit of a favor to Dr. West by asking it, because you have to remember, this is CNN. This is not the Vanguard. And a lot of people that are watching this program that probably do like Cornel West to some extent are admittedly wondering that exact question. You know, I do like you, but isn't this kind of potentially maybe going to spoil the election or throw it to Trump? That is probably something that people are worried about because of how propagandized and brainwashed they've been by the corporate media. And this is just how people think about third-party candidates, including, you know, some good-natured liberals and progressives that maybe just watch too much mainstream media. You bring up Ralph Nader or Jill Stein to them, and they're going to recoil. They're going to say, oh, you mean the people that spoiled the election, that gave us George Bush and Donald Trump. So to be fair to Anderson Cooper, this is a question that Cornel West is going to have to contend with, and he's going to have to convince Democratic voters specifically, because he's running as a lefty, that it's worth casting their vote not for Joe Biden, but for Cornel West. And I think he gave a great explanation as to why the spoiler effect is kind of an overhyped, if not completely inaccurate phenomenon. He points out that like half the country doesn't even vote at all. Half the country doesn't even fucking vote at all. So why are we blaming a infinitesimal fucking fraction of the electorate that actually did the right thing and woke up on election day and said, you know what, I am going to go cast a vote. I am going to go exercise my democratic right and vote for president. That person didn't do anything wrong. That's, one of the people in this country that actually cares and actually, like I said, got out of bed and said, hey, I'm going to go participate in democracy. This is someone that hasn't given up on our system. This is someone who literally took time out of their day to go cast a vote. So Dr. West is like, why are we blaming these people? And why are we blaming the third party candidates? What about all these people that don't even vote at all? Not that they should be blamed. There's very good reasons to be nihilistic about electoralism in this country. But aren't those people the ones that kind of kicked it to Donald Trump or spoiled the election? Maybe if the Democrats had been more inspiring and campaigned better, then they could have inspired some 40 or 50% of the fucking electorate to come out and cast votes for them that otherwise stayed home. Those are the people that we need to be worried about, or rather the Democrats need to be worried about, if they actually want to win elections, not constantly demonizing third-party candidates and the Americans who decide to vote for them.
Never run a large bureaucracy or had any major governmental leadership role. Isn't that important to actually governing as president?
Oh, absolutely. I'd have to bring in people who are experienced, but the important thing is your vision and the lens through which you view the world. Policy is something that can be worked out in light of vision. If your vision is one of militarism abroad, then you're going to be preoccupied with wars and militaristic adventures. We've known Biden's got a long history. I don't think he's actually seen a war that he hadn't supported. I think the invasion and occupation of Iraq was a crime against humanity. How many precious hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed based on a lie? Well, Biden was running interference in that regard. I think mass incarceration in the United States in the last 40 years is a crime against humanity. I've taught in prisons for 41 years. I've stayed in contact with the rich humanity of my brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated. And many have done things they shouldn't have done. And many are there because they're innocent. But the important thing is, they are sites of barbarity. We ought to be ashamed to live in a country when you look at the conditions of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated.
Okay, I shouldn't interrupt him while he's in the middle of such a run right here, but this is the kind of powerful language that we need from our politicians. Holy shit. This is fine. Like just talking about the absolute moral emptiness of a country that is capable of forcing people into the prison system like we do. He uses the term barbarism 100%. It is a source of deep shame for anybody who confronts it, and we need everybody to confront it so that we can, change our society and actually begin healing and begin fundamentally restructuring how we seek justice and understand justice in this country. And I think that Cornel West is doing just such an insanely great job of illustrating that he is the person that can lead us there. And I also wanted to talk about how I thought it was excellent that he took the framing of, you've never been in office, you've never been in the system. And he just says, of course. So I'm going to have to, have a bunch of really smart people with me who know exactly what they're doing and can help me achieve my vision of the world. It's funny. There's actually an exchange from Terry Gilliam, who you guys probably know from like Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail, or for like Brazil, or 13 or 12 Monkeys, or whatever. Anyway, he was talking to Quentin Tarantino when Quentin Tarantino was trying to make Pulp Fiction. And he's like, Terry, how do you understand how everything fucking works? There's the lighting, there's the editing, there's the costuming, there's so many different things. There's the mixing. How do you become a master at all of this? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody becomes a master at all this. You become a master at directing. And he was like, and that's how you look for people who you think, oh yeah, they're going to be able to do what I tell them and then make what I, envision. They're going to be able to work with me, understand me and what I'm looking to achieve, and they're going to know the ins and outs and the way we're doing it all together. Nobody makes a film alone. That would be lunacy. And I love that that's just the approach that Cornel West just like instinctively takes. He's like, of course, like I've never done this before. It's a very difficult job. This is, we're going to need a bunch of people all working together to achieve this vision of justice, that this country has, never known before.
And it's not just the 1994 crime bill. You can go back to the Biden Thernstrom. He was a Strom Thernstrom bills of 84 and 86 and 91 and then 94. You see what I mean? So it's just a matter of trying to be truthful. I'm not trying to trash Brother Biden. I really not. I'm trying to make him accountable for his actions in light of how the wretched of the earth are treated in this nation and around the world. And that's true for any politician, be it Obama, Biden, Clinton, Bush, Trump. All of them have to be measured by the same standard of truth and justice.
I want to ask you about the war in Ukraine, because I saw you tweeted out, you said NATO is an expanding instrument of U.S. global power that provoked Russia into a criminal invasion and occupation of Ukraine. You said this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation could lead to World War III. We must stop the war and war crimes, including cluster bombs used by all parties, and embark on diplomatic talks that should lead to a just peace.
That should be totally uncontroversial.
I mean, how are you going to bring all sides to the table on Ukraine? And do you really believe that NATO provoked Russia into invading Ukraine?
Well, when Russia was promised that NATO would not move 1 inch, and then a few years later, you got 13 former Soviet related countries.
But wait a minute. No, but you're talking about in 1990, there was an agreement signed that NATO would not move into East Germany. But actually nothing was said about further east. And it was, at the very least, it was ambiguous. You can, there's an argument to be made.
It was formal and informal talks, but I mean, the great George Kennan, who's probably had the finest minds of the establishment when it comes to foreign affairs. He said he doesn't understand why NATO needs to exist any longer, because it's defensive. Well, the collapse of the Soviet Empire meant, in fact, you no longer even needed NATO. Europe could come up with its own security, but
it doesn't seem like that, because the people
as an arm of the American empire. That's
you don't
the challenge.
You don't believe, though, that the people of Ukraine right now need NATO to defend against Russian aggression?
Well, the people of Ukraine right now who are suffering, and I'm in deep solidarity with their suffering, they are being caught between this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation. Now,
but that's not really true. I mean, but Dr. West, I mean, it wasn't early on. I mean, you're far more educated than I am, but early on, it was Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary who wanted to join NATO. Warsaw Pact countries, suddenly free, did not want to be under the yoke of the former Soviet Union any longer, and they are the ones who applied to join NATO. It wasn't the U.S. pushing these countries in an expansion play. It was these countries suddenly free, the people in those countries saying, we want to be in the EU. NATO is the fastest way. It's a kind of a stepping stone in the EU. We want that. We want to turn to the West. No, would you have denied Hungary, Czechoslovakia, the choice?
Well, I mean, one, I would have followed George Kennan. I would have abolished NATO right after the collapse of the Soviet Empire, and I would have tried to welcome Russia into the nation, the community of nations, rather than trying to push them against the wall. We know that their system of repression and domination is one in which they're going to feel as if their backs are against the wall. And I think you would probably agree that if Russia or China had missiles in Canada or Mexico targeting Washington, D.C., U.S. government would blow them to smithereens. That's how empires behave. You've read the history. I know the history. We're critical of imperial activity, no matter who it is, American, Russian, and what have you. But America is the most powerful empire in the world, in the history of the world, my brother. And it seems to me, if we can't dismantle that empire in order to empower poor and working people here and abroad, we're going to lose our democracy. It's almost like Rome, it's Cato the Younger and Cicero.
There's about to be an audio difficulty issue coming in CNN. I don't know. I think that Anderson Cooper's my time. I'm sorry. What was that, Dr. West? I don't know.
Yeah, I love how Dr. West too is literally just like laying out the historical context for what happened, and somehow that's like controversial. Like you can't talk about that. He's not even defending Putin. He's not even saying that what Russia did was right or justifiable. He's calling it an imperial crime. But just even giving the context for what happened before Russia rolled into Ukraine, even that is too much. Even that is like, what are you, fucking some sort of a Putin simp? What are you, working for the Russians? It's hilarious.
Against Julius Caesar.
Right, but there's
what
a lot
happens when your empire begins to take
Right.
over your democratic possibilities?
I just spoke to the foreign minister of Ukraine. We're going to have that interview later on. I think if you said to him, you're standing with the people of Ukraine in solidarity, and you're saying that they are just victims in this proxy war, he would.
Indistinguishable from when you said, if you were to have said in 2003, I do not want us to go to Iraq, and immediately some guy that looks just like Anderson Cooper is going to stare back at you and be like, you know, I have a daughter and she's 6 years old, and I was watching her recreational soccer team play, and they were all so excited, and they were talking about their homework. And would you be able to say to 6-7-year-old girl in Iraq that you don't think that she's worth fighting for, to go over there and make sure she can, you know, play soccer with her friends and do homework after school and not be subject to the terror of Saddam Hussein? That's what they would be saying to you. And you'd be like, well, no, dude, fuck. I mean, obviously that's a tragedy. Do you know how many tragedies are going on around the world? Like, I'm not fucking saying that everything is perfect, but I'm also saying that, yeah, we don't need to go and militaristically get involved. And we also don't need to use a basically, not basically, a Cold War era agreement when the United States had firmly positioned itself against the Soviet Union, right? Banding together the non-Soviet countries of Europe and the United States, essentially, and creating a front. Now that the Soviet Union is broken up, and obviously Cornel West has laid out the point, that becomes irrelevant. But now you're arguing that we need to use that to somehow play like referee all around the world whenever it's convenient to your argument. Haven't seen you run a lot of segments about how you know, we need to be uplifting the people of fucking Yemen, right? When the United States is supporting that war. Haven't seen that been run all day on CNN. Haven't found out about the fucking underdevelopment of countries like Somalia and Libya. That was the last time. Hey, man, let's go take a look at, let's do some on-the-ground reporting. How about this? You got the bread for it, Anderson. You self-finance. You get down there. You take, you know, you and a camera crew, and you head down to North Africa, right? You fly right into Tripoli, and you and all your friends hang out and talk about how much better it is there and how there's no suffering because the Americans came and liberated those people. I bet you find out that there's no suffering, that it's paradise on earth over there. But then you put that film reel together and you send it to me, and I'll eat my words.
Say you're out of your mind. I mean, they are thankful. They are thankful for NATO. They are thankful for the U.S. You can call it the American empire, but I mean, they are thankful for all these countries rallying to their side. I mean, I've been there. You've probably been there as well. I mean, it is a horrible. It's an invasion. I mean, of killing civilians in cities.
Oh no, it is a criminal invasion. I'm not denying it's a criminal invasion, but what I'm saying is, you go back to the men's talks. You go back to March. 1 month after the war began, my brother, I'm calling for ceasefire. I don't want to see the suffering
for ceasefire. Vladimir Putin isn't really listening to what you say or I say or anybody says. I mean, he's doing what he wants to do, just like he slaughtered. I mean, you saw what he did to Grozny. You saw what he did to Grozny in the 90s. I mean, he flattened that city. Civilians were trapped in that city. No, the world didn't come to the rescue of Grozny. He did exactly what he wanted to do. I mean, unchecked, he will slaughter people.
That is 100% true, and nobody's going to vouch that Putin is like the kind of guy that you would hang out with. But it does kind of fly in the face of the argument that people are making about how he's trying to be the next Hitler and that all he wants to do is like conquer Europe. It's like, yeah, he's done this shit before, but he's never, like, that was in the 90s. That was, 25 years ago. He didn't continue to steamroll and do that all around wherever he wanted to claim new land, right? Which again, it doesn't excuse the barbarism. It doesn't excuse the, immorality and the tragedy of what was done. But it does kind of, like, again, this is international warfare. This is imperialism. This is, He's not expanding, which is the argument that they're going to make, is that, like, unchecked, he's going to continue to expand forever, as opposed to just putting a check on the, the NATO border. And again, I think Cornel West is trying his best to be nuanced and insist that he understands that this is a crime against humanity, that this is an illegal offensive invasion, much like the one that we did in Iraq, right? he's also not willing to say that we should have a organization like NATO throwing gasoline on the situation, even if members of the government in Ukraine and perhaps civilians as well want the United States to continue to escalate militarily.
Yeah, and it's just so refreshing to see some actual nuanced foreign policy analysis on CNN. You can tell that Anderson Cooper is just so desperate to paint this whole situation as if we're talking about the fucking Lord of the Rings or something. There's a good side and a bad side, and it's black and white. Like, no, it's not. There's two massive imperial powers at play, Russia and NATO. And then, unfortunately, there's all the innocent civilians of Ukraine and Russia that are caught in the crossfire of the proxy war, which is exactly what Cornel West said. But at the same time, he can have that analysis and also say that, yes, of course, Putin is a criminal. Of course, this invasion is barbaric and it is imperialistic as well. And it's like, thank you. What I feel like Zach and I have been like two of the only motherfuckers out here saying that. It's not that hard to have just a little bit of fucking nuance and not pick a side like you're a fucking 5-year-old rooting for your favorite T-ball team or some shit. Like, it's just so stupid. And I really appreciate Cornel West's honesty.
Well, I mean, unchecked, he will slaughter folk. Unchecked, what we did in Iraq was slaughtering people. Unchecked, what we've done in other places.
But sir,
variety
Dr.
of
West,
other empires
Dr.
do
West,
that. Nation states do that, though.
No,
brother,
I
and
understand.
they're wrong. And when they're wrong, you have to pull up. You have to point it out.
I respect you. I love you. But I do think it's inappropriate to compare the Russian bombing of Grozny and what we witnessed there with the war in Iraq. I mean, to say that innocent.
Pause it. Oh, it is inappropriate to compare that. It is inappropriate because the damage that we did to Iraq and the surrounding region far, far, far surpasses what Russia to this point has done to Ukraine. Let me just really quickly. Iraqis.
500,000.
It's 500,000. Yeah, I was just gonna pull. Okay, yeah, it's 500,000. We all know. Insane. And the torture that we did, guys. Do I need to pull up pictures of Abu Ghraib? Do I need to show you guys what the fuck we were up to over there? These were cab drivers that were pulled off the street. We were dealing with warlords in all parts of the Middle East. We were turning a blind eye to children, sex slaves. We were doing all kinds of just absolutely nuts things. I don't even have to get into the half of it. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, of course it is. He's 100% right here, and he's about to fuck it all up.
Yep, and you gotta love Dr. West's face. I think he had the same exact expression that you had, Zach.
Yeah,
when
I
you
actually
had
haven't seen this part.
what was that?
Because I actually haven't seen this part. I only watched the clip that was going around of when he called him the establishment. But yeah, I think he's ready to chime in with the exact same thing that I just chimed in.
Innocents are killed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the horrible things happen.
500,000 Iraqis killed, my brother.
Well,
500,000.
Yeah, listen, I was there. I mean, I
Well, yeah,
was there. I was there with troops.
He was there
I
and he
truly
doesn't
understand. I also saw a lot
He's like, I was there. I was manufacturing consent for the war alongside all my colleagues. What do you mean?
of Americans getting killed, and I saw, the horrors of Saddam Hussein. I'm just saying, I don't think it's accurate to compare the pummeling of a city by Russian artillery with civilians inside, pummeling every single day with the intention of just destroying and flattening a city, with actions the U.S. took. I mean, I don't know. Look, wars, horrible things happen in wars, and it's horrible.
War, that's absolutely. But
he disputes the fact that we didn't just pummel anyone in Iraq. We didn't just bomb to smithereens. Here's Amnesty International. Let's see what Amnesty International has to say. Right? I think Anderson Cooper would use that as a fair metric, a good barometer. Oh, let's look at this press release. Mosul, Iraq. I apologize. I fucked that up. Bombed in their homes. Civilians blame reckless coalition forces. We followed the instructions of the government, which told us stay in your homes, avoid displacement. He said, we heard these instructions on the radio. Also, leaflets were dropped by planes. This is why we stayed in our homes. Shortly after, the bombs came raining down. As the terrified Altai family huddled together, the house next door collapsed on them. 6 people were killed in there in the morning of November 7th, 2016, including Wad's 3-year-old daughter and 9-year-old son. And this is in 2016, guys. This is 12, 13 years after the invasion of Iraq. Okay, guys. We don't even have to get into the drone strike footage that Julian Assange made apparent to everyone. Turning around just to kill civilians, turning around just to kill the Red Cross, the Reuters. I almost said Red Cross. Reuters reporters, so that there would be no documentation of what had happened. Guys, this is the horrible shit we were doing that we have on footage. Imagine what we don't have on footage, guys. Imagine what we'll never know about that we did. There are so many examples of crimes against humanity of what we did in Iraq alone. That doesn't even count Afghanistan. That doesn't what we did in North Africa. Our crimes in the war on terror are boundless, and it is wrong, and it is more than self-serving. It's obviously ahistorical, but it's just delusional, and it is the most American brain rot thing to just assume that because another country did it, it's worse than what we did. In the face of 500,000, you have to stammer and try and say, oh, I was there. Yeah, you saw those 500,000 people die. Go fuck yourself then. And you're going to try and tell me, like, that's ridiculous. It's just a need to make America the hero when we did something that was so wrong that we need to always repent for it.
100%. And this is like recent American history too. Like, we're not talking about fucking Vietnam. We're talking about when Zach and I were in the first fucking grade. Like, in our lifetimes, we remember this shit happening. So should you, Anderson Cooper.
But I mean, you know, and I know any comparative analysis of levels of barbarity and cruelty is going to lend itself to this ugly algebra of blood that we don't want to get into. But all I'm saying is you can't just jump into a situation where people are being treated barbarically. There's no doubt that Ukrainian people are being treated in a barbaric way. That's that murderous way. There's no doubt about that. But the context is one in which that did not have to be if the expansion of NATO, and NATO is an arm of the American global power network. It's
but
just
what you're saying though in Ukraine is that the Ukrainians, they're just going to have to compromise and give up their land because they're just in the wrong place.
No, I'm not saying that.
Well, you've said there have to be hard compromises on all sides. You said there have to be hard compromises. You said there have to be compromises on all sides, and you know, compromise for Ukraine means Crimea. It means whole parts of their east. Is that fair?
Well,
when was the last time Crimea had, Ukraine control of it? 2014 was when Russia annexed Crimea. So that was under the Obama administration. Now, I don't remember because I'm not very smart, but did Obama go to war with Putin? No. In fact, he said, absolutely the fuck not. We're not going to do that. All right. And then, so how is them having, if that leads to a fucking end, if that leads to a ceasefire, it's like, okay, yeah, you guys have Crimea, like you have had for almost a decade. And sure, that's wrong, whatever. I mean, it seemed actually like, it wasn't creating too much global disruption at the time, at least in comparison, right, to the craziness that's going on now. I would say that would be okay. So it's like, okay, we're going to pull Russia out of, mainland Ukraine. Russia's going to rest on Crimea. They'll call that a victory at home. Ukraine will call it a victory because they, got Russia out. That would seem completely reasonable as far as like international diplomatic relationships go. And I know it's not your home. You shouldn't be negotiating. It's like, that's true. But everybody still wants our munitions that our tax dollars pay for. So I still feel like I get a seat at the investor table just a little bit on this one.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I want a just peace for my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, and I don't want World War III. I don't want World War III. The way that we're moving now, we got 3,000 advisors. Well, we heard that in Vietnam. We're on the way to possible nuclear exchange. How ugly. Here we got Trump pushing us toward the second civil war at home. You got Biden pushing us toward a third world war abroad. We need an alternative. That's what this campaign's probably about, my brother.
Dr. West, I appreciate your time tonight, as always.
No, indeed. Love you. Even when we disagree. Love you, man.
You take care.
Oof. And that's the face of a man who's trying to smile off having his ass handed to him. And that was the righteous joy of Cornel West, who's seeking the Green Party nomination for president. Just an absolute masterclass in how to deal with the liberal media, and honestly, in how to deal with conservative media. And I think that this is going to make the Biden re-election, campaign squad shit their pants, because I think that they're fucked if Cornel gets to 5%.
Yeah, that was totally an embarrassing performance for Anderson Cooper. Just a parody of a corporate news interview, right? I mean, they start off, "Oh, don't you think you're going to spoil the election and re-elect Trump?" That's their first question. And then the second and seemingly only other question is like, "Wow, how dare you have a nuanced view of foreign policy?" That's crazy. That's basically the whole interview. What a fucking parody. Anyway, Cornel did a great job. And it's just great to see him offered this platform in which to contrast himself with talking head hacks like Anderson Cooper.